And nearby, a newsboy shouts his wares. The Silver Legion Ranger, a propaganda newspaper.
Late paper. Just now, late paper. Silver Ranger, late paper. Free speech stopped by Jew riot.
Blaming Jews for all the ills in America.
Our unemployment problem was transferred to the United States from foreign lands. And if we had refused admission to the 16,500,000 foreign-born in our midst, there would be no serious unemployment problem to harass us.
A moral responsibility, as we call it, of America to have America for Americans. And anything that disrupts that by having masses of immigration disrupts the whole idea of the nation.
This was the threat for many Americans. The growing number of Jewish refugees, including tens of thousands of children. In 1939, a bill proposed special sanctuary for 20,000 children outside the quota. The Wagner-Rogers bill would become a litmus test for how Americans really felt about Jews. But there was immediate opposition to the bill.
The law that we had from 1924 we thought was good. Why don't we just support the written law and not seek for ways to circumnavigate around it and just to benefit certain large groups of immigrants?
They were afraid, for example, of the argument that Europe was trying to dump all its Jews on the United States, and anti-Semitism certainly was a powerful ingredient.
A cousin of the president, Laura Delano Roosevelt, commented, 20,000 charming children would all too soon grow into 20,000 ugly adults.
And many would quote the numbers for the United States, leave Hamburg and St. Louis, happy in anticipation of a new life far from Germany, where their experiences under the Nazi regime will only be a sad, sad dream.
But when the ship arrived in Havana, the Cuban government refused to honor the refugees' landing certificates. Friends and relatives watched as despairing passengers waited aboard ship during a week of futile negotiations. The passengers telegraphed President Roosevelt, requesting temporary haven. Their plea fell on deaf ears. Finally, the ship was forced back to Europe, sailing first for days along the Florida coast. America would make no exception to its rigid immigration laws. One refugee camp at Fort Ontario, an abandoned army base.
We felt that since we were urging other countries to take in refugees, we had to do something ourselves. And therefore we did establish a camp in Oswego, New York, but it was largely a symbolic gesture.
982 refugees arrived in August 1944. As the administration painted a magnanimous picture, 55,000 quota places for that year alone went unused.
In the end, the War Refugee Board played a vital role in saving the lives of 200,000 Jews. A very valuable contribution, to be sure, but the number is terribly small compared to the total of 6 million killed. The board did prove that a few good people, Christians and Jews, could finally break through the walls of indifference. The great shame is that if Roosevelt had created the board a year earlier, and if it had been truly empowered, the War Refugee Board could have saved tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands more, and in the process have rescued the conscience of the nation.
From Detroit down to Houston, from New York to LA, well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time to stand